Welcome to Camp Podcast. I am pianist Eunmi Ko and I serve as president of the Contemporary Art Music Project or CAMP. CAMP is an organization that promotes innovative art music and collaborates with composers and performing artists. One of many activities we do is our podcast series. Our hosts explore a wide range of topics from marginalized composers in the music history to current collaborations. Tonight, I am your host, and I am delighted to have Angela Han, who wears many, many hats. Angela Han is an Asian American artist, musician, and educator who creates art inspired by music and mythology. Her work celebrates the creativity and courage of women while igniting the imagination through curious questions and thoughtful word building. Hi, Angela. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm so honored.
Yeah, it's so nice to get to know you and your very interesting work. And we usually start with a background question to break the ice and um, get to know about our guest. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm really curious about how you became an artist, how you chose this profession, and if there's anybody who inspired you.
Oh, great. These are great questions. So I got started in the arts because my parents were very keen on sending me to lessons. Uh, um, in China, in the Chinese culture, there is this qin qi shu hua kind of I don't know if I call it a lifestyle, but it's to cultivate oneself. I think back in the day in ancient times, it was for women to become more of a a better match for in terms of marriage. But since this is contemporary times, and my mother was like. She was not all about that. She was about, the more you know, the more skill sets and the diversity of skill sets you have, the more you can contribute to society. The more, I guess, more effectively you can play your role or in the community. So my parents made sure that I got my music lessons, and I went to art class too. So like it was every Saturday that I would, in the morning, we would drive to my piano teacher's residence. So I would have my lesson, and then we would drive all the way back home, and we would eat lunch, and then I would put on my smock. And the smock wasn't the thing that it didn't look like an apron. It was actually just a really oversized t-shirt. It was a really oversized t-shirt that that it was okay to get messy with. So I'm running around with this really big t-shirt, and we would go to art class. And in this art class, we learned how to use different mediums. Excuse me. So it would be like pastels, and then you graduated to charcoal, and then to acrylic. Actually, it was watercolor, and then acrylic, and then oil. So I learned how to use all these different mediums, and I'm primarily, at least as of now, a painter. And so I went to these classes from like I was really young until I was in 18, about to go to college. And then once college happened, I was able to find an experiment and really hone my own style, versus like copying things from a photograph. And so I was able to hone my own style, and as I guess I was around 15, I started to fall in love with research. And so I would go out to my high school's libraries and the public libraries and start looking at different. I was looking for different role models and music and in the visual arts. And so even while I was in high school, I wanted to to see people who are like me and then listen to them. I remember I specifically checked out a book in high school about composers who are women. I eventually bought
Oh.
a copy of it after I graduated college. And then, reading about Fanny Hensel and Clara Schumann, and but these women, well, they're women, and I identify as a woman, but I still had yet to see someone who was like me, right? Asian American woman.
Mm.
But I kept looking in terms of artists. I was looking at like Maya Lin and seeing like her great works and seeing how I can incorporate her depth in her work is so remarkable. To see if I can incorporate that in my visual art. And at some point, I wanted to bridge the two from my little self with the smock and the piano lessons to being like an explorer in high school and college. And then after I graduated, I just knew that I didn't want to do a 9 to 5.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong at all with 9 to 5, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew I wanted a life in which I can delve deeply into my creativity. And I didn't want to walk a straight line. I wanted to get lost and I wanted to find myself. And I didn't want to find myself. I wanted to create myself. So then I made a commitment out like outside of, well, when I graduated, that I would not do a 9 to 5. Right now, I feel like I often work 24 hours, but but that is the lifestyle I chose so that I could keep stretching the boundaries of my music and art practice and fuse them together and find ways to weave them. And now, like I have so many role models that I could um, admire and be inspired by. So that's how I became, like, very short, long story short. That's how I became, I suppose you would say, interdisciplinary or a multidisciplinary artist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great. And, we talk about interdisciplinary artists and collaborations and inspiration, all that. But it has been there throughout the history.
Hmm.
And I read about, and I actually got to know about an artist, Korean artist, who decided to become an artist after listening to music. I don't know what music he listened to, but yeah, I thought, wow, this is really cool, and we don't think about how um, all these are really connected and related so much. So yeah, it's very interesting, and
Oh, I think it's marvelous.
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like the arts um, are tied together, and that it's so, I feel like we don't give or gift ourselves the wonder that we deserve when we only stay in one one
Right.
industry or one field, one genre. There's so much in the world that it's all at the tips of our fingers in terms of we can add that into our practice
Hmm.
and become more than we are, and then our work becomes more masterful.
Right. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you again. And you're actually teaching piano, correct?
Yes, yes, I teach
Yeah,
piano. I teach
yeah.
music. Yes. Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah, yeah. How is that going?
Oh, I love it so much. Um, I teach from very young children, 4, 5 years old,
Hmm.
to adults.
Mm.
And I think what I love most about teaching is having those magical moments in which the student realizes that they can do anything they want with their creativity at the piano or beyond the piano.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taught in a certain way. I'm classically trained in piano,
Mm-hmm. Right,
and
right. Yeah.
it didn't focus so much on creativity, um, but I did compose when I was with my piano instructor, and she was wonderful. Like I often think of her as like my piano teacher back in the day, as my
Mm-hmm.
second mom
Mm-hmm.
almost. But
Yeah.
I never really did improv, for example, in my lessons.
Mm-hmm.
No one told me that I could like do my own thing
Right.
at the keys, and that it was going to be okay for me to do that, and worthwhile. Like my quote unquote my songs, my music was going to be fabulous. And so now when I teach my students, I want to gift that to them. Like I want them to
Mm-hmm.
know that
Mm-hmm.
they're supremely awesome, and that their music, whether they make mistakes or come up with something strange or have crunchy notes, I encourage them to fully embrace that. Um, and so I think that those are the most magical moments when I teach, when I see that after all the hard work we put together to really open up possibility, and that could mean, yes, composition or improv, and also interpreting a piece, right?
Yes.
Um, when the student sees that they can do that on their own, and that
Mm-hmm.
it is a viable option, I think that's just wonderful.
It is.
Then I know I've done my job as a teacher, um,
Right.
and I do that for all of my students who are the 4-year-olds to adults, and I think um, one of the most important things as a teacher is to encourage, yes, encourage um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
perseverance. I encourage perseverance
Mm-hmm.
in in working on an assigned piece, or finishing that improv or that composition,
Mm-hmm.
so that we can all see the final product, and then the world can
Mm-hmm.
also enjoy it. So yes, I love being a teacher.
Yeah. 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 I mean, with your, your role as a music teacher and you're interested in music, of course, we have to talk about your projects. And I was so intrigued by your project, especially the 50-50 shows. And the one that's going on this day, the Realms of Courage. Um, yeah, so both are about Asian female composers, and their works, and of course they're different projects, but um, it will be great if you can give us kind of summary of the projects, and also I really want to know how you started this
Oh,
project.
okay. Oh, this is going to be a fun story because it started during the pandemic. The 50/50 show started during the
Hmm.
pandemic,
Yeah.
during, let's see, 2020 that year.
Hmm.
And I would say, truth be told, the yearning to do this project started a long time ago, and it's now
Hmm.
that I have the skill sets, the knowledge, and the resources to bring these projects alive. And it's a good time period in history to do it too. So for the 50/50 show, actually the full name of that project is 50 mythical worlds inspired by 50 women composers. And the
Mhm.
composers identify from many different backgrounds, the majority of whom are women of color. So yes,
Mhm.
Asian identifying women, Latina women, uh, African American women. So it's a huge spectrum of composers that
Yes.
I really dug deep to research. And I pursued this project. This is the fun part. In 2020, I had intended to go to Germany during the summer,
Hmm.
and I wanted to go and research Fanny Hensel, composer
Mm.
Fanny Hensel,
Yes.
during the summer of 2020. Of course, the pandemic happened. I was not able to go to
Right.
Germany. I was like, okay, that's I can't do that anymore because every place was in lockdown or shelter in place.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, well, what are opportunities in the SFA area that because I reside and create work here. What opportunities do I have access to in the summer? And I really wanted to do a summer project. And uh, here in the Bay Area, there is a center called the Sanchez Art Center in Pacifica, California. And every summer, they have a show called the 50/50 Show. And that year, it was the 12th annual 50/50 Show. And the premise, I suppose you would say, is in the show, there will be 50 artists who will each create 50 paintings in 50 days. Um,
Hmm.
so, and each artist who, if they were accepted, would come up with their own theme. So, some people decide to do I don't know what kind of examples of the themes I'm going to give here, but just to cut to the chase, I decided my theme would be about composers who are women, and because my artwork,
Mhm.
I love world building. It's just so satisfying bringing to life
Mhm.
the imaginative places that percolate within my mind. So I was like, okay, I'm going to combine the two. I'm going to create these mythical worlds, magical worlds, and I'm going to amplify 50 composers who identify as women and with whom I feel a connection to, either through their story or their music. And oh my goodness, it was so intense. It was 50 days, 50 paintings. I had to be strategic about it. So I would have to uh, do all my research. So, 'cause I actually didn't do 50 paintings per day. I knew I had to, once the project started, I had to do very intensive, extensive research. Because when you Google composers for women, or just composers in general, women don't come up immediately on Google.
Right.
And then to make matters even more complicated, women of color don't immediately come up, which is a problem because women of color who are composers exist, and there are many of us. There are many of us. There are many of them, and but they're just not. They're not at our fingertips. They don't make it easy for us to find mirrors, and so that would take a 2 or 3 days of just really intense research only, and then going through the composer's music. I ended up, I think, going through the music of more than 100 composers during that time. And then after I did the research and I chose the music, there'll be like super, super, super intense painting time to um, to to create these worlds inspired by the composer's work. And I made it. I made it to the very end. So the 50/50 show was born. And the paintings, actually, the individual paintings were only 6 inches by 6 inches, so small. And I realized at the time that I really would have loved to interact with the composers to see if I could have interviewed them, talked to them about, or excuse me, listen to their process, their life story. And
Mm.
so the 50-50 show planted seeds in my mind for a bigger endeavor, um, which became Realms of Courage, celebrating Asian women composers. Um, I felt like it was a huge gift to bring to life the 50-50 show because now I had gained a very deep knowledge of composers who are women. And the objective for Realms of Courage, celebrating Asian women composers, is to celebrate, amplify, be inspired by composers who I knew looked like me, had similar life stories, who I can identify with very closely. So I identify as Asian American, and so I took a lot of time in the summer of 2021, so 1 year later, after the 50 show, to again do the whole extensive, intensive research. And on top of that process, now I had to do the outreach. And
Mm.
some of the composers I had not known before.
Mhm.
I had never met them, and so there were these moments of like, oh, this is like totally a cold call, like a complete, an email sent out into the universe, and I am not sure if the composer is going to be open to doing this project. But it was just so amazing when the composer responded back and said, "Yes, we'll do this project together." And the project, the purpose behind it is to, like I said, amplify these composers and their music and their life stories, so that I would say, the public, the world, can also celebrate, know, and write about these composers even more than they are now. The composers who who I selected for the Realms of Courage. There are 15 of them. They're very renowned. They're
Right.
they're
Yeah.
woo top notch. And I feel incredibly honored to work with them. But we come up against this. At least I've come up against this funny question. For example, when I'm talking to my students, are they famous?
Mm.
And I always have to take a pause and say like, oh, in the music world, in the music field, yes, they're really really renowned, top notch, etc. Right?
Right.
But when we talk about mainstream, about um, the just public in general, I don't think most people off the top of their head can name a composer who identifies as Asian or Asian American. And the like I said, with the purpose of this project, I really hope to change that. I hope to change
Mm.
that by creating large scale or yeah, large scale artworks, whether that's paintings or something else that reflect the life stories and lived experiences and the music of these 15 composers. And through these artworks, because they're visual, right, put it at the visual forefront of the public so they can see and feel drawn to the artwork, and then therefore to learn more about the composers and their works. It's just I think there was such a great opportunity here to merge art and music to really do a service to my community of Asian and Asian American women. No, I'm just so happy to talk about it. I love these
Yeah.
as much as I love doing these projects, I feel incredibly overjoyed to now have the opportunity to say, like, I have a mirror. I have many mirrors now. I didn't when I was 5 or 10. I didn't. my teachers never taught me about these composers, which is looking like it's sad because these composers exist and there's so many of them and they're incredibly masterful. And I think about if I'd known about them and studied their work, what kind of artist I would be today. But I'm very happy now. I'm very happy now that I get to be inspired by these 15 Asian American women composers every day.
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was really a great project. And as you talked about, it's almost like art works as also for the 50-50 shows, artwork as kind of a tool to promote music and composers. It's great. Yeah. So how did you select these composers? I mean, there are so many, literally so many composers in the, of course, the Asia, and also for the 50-50 shows that you included composers from other continents. There's so many, and I would like to know uh, the process of selecting
Oh,
these
okay.
composers.
Okay, now that's a good question. Um, I would say step one was to find them first. Um, I
Right,
uh, the
right.
first step was to put in the time and effort and persistent effort. If I couldn't find easily, for example, if I I had to be very specific with my Google searches, like a Chinese American composer who's a woman. If I couldn't find it on page one of Google search, I would go to page two, three, and oftentimes it
Okay.
would go until like page five, and they're like, oh, finally. It drove me nuts, but I knew it had to be done. So the first part was finding these composers, and and actually a critical part of that step was to also discover and learn about the directories that have composers as members. So, a few have been the the Chamber Music America, the Composers Equity Project. That was I remember they had a PDF of composers, and I printed that out and I highlighted composers. I went through pretty much every composer who self-identified as Asian, because they on those directories there they have toggles, or that you can put in a search and like for different regions of the world or how they identify as. Then I wrote all the composers down again, like so many of them, which fills my heart with a lot of
Mhm.
this feeling of like, there's so many, it's so wonderful. And then after listing them and marking down their websites and then their music. Uh, this is actually something important, I think, for all creators is the accessibility of your website. You may not think that that would be one of the points of selection, but it is. For me, it was. It was if I could easily access their platform
Right.
and find their bio and their music, then that enabled me to fully engage with who they were and their work, at least in realms of their website. And so for the composers who it was hard to find and navigate their platform, um, it just it hindered the potential connection I would have
Right.
with the composer just from the website, the platform alone. And this is not just the website too. This is like Bandcamp and SoundCloud, etc. YouTube. I followed all these composers on their different platforms. And then the another point of selection was because this project is also very deeply personal.
Mm-hmm.
The Realms of Courage celebrating Asian women composers for that project. It's deeply personal. It's a project I dreamed of, and it comes from a place where, again, as a young girl, I wished I had these mirrors, and so the composers I chose, their music had to resonate. Actually, let me expand that. Not just their music, but their creative practice had to resonate with me very very strongly. And so, if you go through the list of composers for Realms of Courage, you'll notice that many, if not all of them, are multidisciplinary, have done other,
Right.
are not just isolated as composers, but they're also visual artists
Mm-hmm.
and poets
Right.
and writers. And for me, that was important because I identify as a creator who, well, I want every bit of that honeypot, not just one honeypot, many honeypots
Mm-hmm.
of,
Mm-hmm.
of, of the creative expression. And it's difficult in a world in which people today seem more keen on specializing and categorizing yourself. Like, if you're a visual artist, you just are a visual artist. Don't dabble necessarily in other things because that's not what you're known for, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see successful women, Asian women, who are doing multiple things and whose work brings together many disciplines and pushes the boundaries, and composers who are always looking for the new thing. And so I had to get that feeling from their bio and from their music and any interviews accessible on the internet. And then if I knew that I would choose them, if in my heart I could feel like this how do you describe, this feeling that you have, like, not necessarily aha moment, but that's the one, or she's the one. She's the one. And then I was like, okay, uh yes, I had all these steps that were very logical and practical, right? But at the end of the day, if you're doing a project that is from the heart, it also has to, the people I choose also has to click with my heart. So that's, at the end of the day, that's how I knew, um, how I selected these composers. Oh, and it was difficult, but after reaching out to the composers, there were some composers who, for various reasons, weren't able to participate in the project this time around. If there's a future opportunity, hooray!
Mm-hmm.
Originally, the project had meant to feature 20 composers, and um, and then 15 incredible composers signed on. I realized that, 15 is a great number because I totally could have just chosen maybe two or three and created a marvelous project. And I'm super ambitious, so I went over 10. So it's been an incredible process. And I absolutely adore the 15 composers who I work with at this time.
Yeah, I was able to catch a few of the events. Not unfortunately, not all of them, but I will check them out. They're all on YouTube, right?
Yes.
And yeah, and you have one coming. I think it's end of June,
Oh,
correct?
that is correct. Yes. So these are when I created this project, I was like, okay, we need a way for the public to interact in real time with these composers. Because, I mean, you can look at the website, right? And you could listen to the music, but
Right,
there's something very special about seeing the composers, living composers, and being able to ask them questions.
right,
It strikes a deeper chord,
right.
so to speak. And so these panels, my intention was, I wanted it to be for almost all ages. So far, the youngest has been 7 years old, and the oldest over
Right,
60.
right.
I want it to be very fun. I wanted the audience to have many opportunities to ask questions and to really absorb the composer's words of wisdom. So there were five. There was May 1st, May 15th, May 29th. We just had one, June 12th. And our last and grand finale one is June 26th.
Yeah, yeah. Really cool series, and I enjoyed being there for the live event, and also catching some other ones on YouTube. So it was very fun, and uh, I think we get to hear about the composer and about mostly their career and their work, which is music. And we talked about that a lot, but I don't think we talk about their kind of uh, personal inspiration, and their something that goes really deep down. So it was also for me rare opportunity to hear all that from the composers. um, so yeah, it's been really blessed.
Oh, I'm so glad
Congratulations.
you enjoyed it. And I love how you said, yes, I totally agree with you. When we do, usually when we do panels, right, for any professional peeps, it's very focused on, their work and like maybe the bio that they
Right,
present on the
right.
website. It's
Yeah,
very, it doesn't get, it doesn't always get into the personal and the lived experiences. It's I for these panels, I hoped to create a live event in which the audience can really relate to the composers. Like the composers have been through triumphs, struggles, all things are so incredibly human, right? And I wanted the audience to be able to feel free to ask them questions. For example, how to I think the last one was like, how do we become a full-time artist? How do you overcome this fear of like, oh, it's being a full-time creator. It's a scary thing. There's a lot of
it
unpredictability,
is.
and the composers being completely honest in their responses and sharing their experiences of trying, failing, trying again, succeeding, how to persist. Um, and that's very important. I feel like that's when it truly hits home again to the heart, right? And then I think at that point
Yeah,
I feel like if I were in the audience because I'm hosting, truly motivated to do, even if it's not music, to do my own thing, like to pursue my dream after these events. So that's a hope.
yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there we all hear about the composers. Oh yeah, such a genius, and we read their bio all the times, and it looks like, oh, we can never become so like so and so and so. But actually, they are also people and human
Oh,
being, and they
absolutely.
have lives, and so that's really great to know. Yeah. um there's one last realms of courage event on June
Yes,
26th,
June
correct?
26th.
June 26th to 26th. So check that out. All the information is on your website, correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. So check out Angela Han. And it's angelahan.com, correct?
It's Angela Han Art.
Art.com, yes. But you can Google Angela Han, and her website, Angela's website, comes up, and yeah, go there and check out all the great things Angela had done. It's amazing to see also the all beautiful artworks. Really, like I wanna. I want to buy. I want to buy them if I can. Really beautiful, really. Um, so, what is next for you after this project? Anything new coming up?
Oh, this
Yeah.
is how do I answer this question? So after the panel series, I will be fully launching myself into creating the artwork inspired by these composers' lived experiences, their music. I imagine this collaboration will go for quite some time into the future. But another project I'm working on now is weaving together different stories within Chinese mythology. So taking different stories and seeing it's kind of like when you're I don't know if you've ever done this, but you're writing a story and you're imagining this is better imagining like different characters from different books how they would interact with each other. So I'm doing that, like taking different characters from different Chinese myths and putting them together to see how they would interact
Wow.
and
Oh, that
see
sounds so fun. That's
yeah
so
so
fun.
doing that and reading the it's called the Shanghai Jing, the classic of mountains and seas, and I'm trying to really flex my Chinese reading and writing to be able to do this because this is a kind of an ancient text and so I was like I need to go to the true source. I like
Wow.
feeling I'm not an archaeologist. But I like feeling like one, like I'm digging for treasure. I think if I'm ever able to be a treasure hunter in my in my lifetime or in my next life, I would like to be that very much. So I'm creating a series that again is playing with these different Chinese myths, and a lot of the characters I'm focusing on are identified as women and I'm there are lots of problems that occur in throughout these mythologies, and see if they can come together and find solutions is quite it's quite empowering. So that's what I'm working
Wow.
on, and that's what I'll be working on for the next several months.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds really, really fun. So, yeah, best luck with that. And I just can't wait to see what would come out.
Thank you. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming here and talking to me, being our guest and sharing your thoughts. It's always great to hear um, all kinds of insights from our guest. So we can wrap up this episode. Listening to some music. I mean, that's always great way to end. So it's your pick, Princess by Teresa Calpotura, who's going to be also your guest, correct?
Yes. So Theresa Calpotura is one of the Realms of Courage composers, and she's been my mentor for years. I
Mm.
think no, it's true. I know I am the creator I am now today because of her, like in huge part because of her. And so her piece Princess is inspired by a Philippine version of Sita's Ramayana. Um, oh, she's such a remarkable storyteller, and I love stories. So I really hope you enjoy this piece, Princess. It's written in the woman's perspective. So hope you enjoy.
Great. Thank you all for listening. And yeah, here's Princess by Teresa Carpotura.
I'm searching for lost time, but the sand keeps slipping. I thought you'd always be mine. I move faster, will you be back on the corner? If I move faster, ooh, I'm tangled up in the vine, but my feet aren't tripping. My demon is close behind, but I'm not looking. The rocks are breaking, the earth is shaking, and under his breath he says he's gonna make me a princess. Doesn't have to feel or have to fight. Princess, this golden kingdom that I could rule by. Princess, with ladies in waiting, all adorned and unfading. Princess, dark divine. Princess, it could be mine. Princess.
Support us by donating. You can go to our website www.contemporaryartmusicproject.org and simply click the donate button. Help us continue our podcast festival and other exciting projects. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.